The monitors beeped with mechanical precision in the sterile hospital room. Evening shadows stretched across the linoleum floor as I sat beside my mother's bed, her chest rising and falling with each labored breath. The doctors had said the surgery went well, but recovery would take time. I'd stepped out briefly to grab coffee when it happened, that moment that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my life. When I returned, a woman I'd never seen before was leaning over my mother's unconscious form. She was thin, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing hospital scrubs that somehow didn't quite fit right. Something about her presence made the air feel charged, dangerous. She straightened when she saw me, neither startled nor apologetic. Her eyes, unnaturally pale against her olive skin, locked with mine as she moved toward the door where I stood frozen, coffee burning my hand through the thin paper cup. "She swapped you at birth," the woman whispered as she passed, her voice carrying the faint trace of an accent I couldn't place. Then she was gone, her footsteps fading down the corridor. The coffee cup slipped from my fingers, spreading across the floor like spilled secrets. By the time security arrived, responding to my frantic call, there was no trace of the strange woman. The hospital staff found no record of her employment. The security cameras showed only static during the 3 minutes she had been in my mother's room. It was as if she had never existed. But her words had lodged themselves in my mind like splinters. "She swapped you at birth." The drive back to my childhood home felt longer than the 3 hours it actually took. Rain pelted against the windshield, matching the rhythm of questions hammering inside my skull. I'd called my younger sister Natalie twice, but she hadn't picked up, typical of her these days. She'd been distant since our father's death last year, buried in her law studies and rarely making time for family. I pulled into the long gravel driveway that led to the Victorian house where I'd grown up in Oak Ridge, Massachusetts. The old place looked tired in the rain, its gingerbread trim and once cheery yellow paint faded to the color of old bones. Mom had been talking about selling it before her heart attack, claiming it was too much house for one person. Now I wondered if there were other reasons she wanted to leave. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. The scent of lemon furniture polish, the creaking third step on the staircase, the wall of family photos chronicling birthdays, graduations, and holiday gatherings. I stood before these images, studying my own face for the first time with uncertainty. In each photo, I was the odd one out, the only one with auburn hair among a family of blondes, the only one with hazel eyes instead of blue. Genetics are strange, Mom had always said when I asked why I didn't look like Natalie or Dad. "You take after my grandmother." I'd never questioned it. Why would I? Eleanor Bennett was my mother, the woman who had nursed me through chicken pox, taught me to bake her famous apple pie, and cried with pride at my medical school graduation. The woman who now lay in a hospital bed recovering from heart surgery. She swapped you at birth. I needed to focus on something concrete. As an orthopedic surgeon, I dealt in uncertainties, broken bones, torn ligaments, things that could be fixed with skill and precision. This situation required the same clinical approach. I would investigate methodically, starting with my birth records. Mom's home office was meticulously organized, as always. The antique desk where she had graded papers throughout her 30-year teaching career stood by the window overlooking her prized garden. I hesitated before opening the drawers, feeling like an intruder in my own home. The bottom drawer contained a locked metal box I'd never seen before. It took an hour of searching to find the key, taped to the underside of her jewelry box liner. Inside were documents I'd expect: birth certificates for Natalie and me, my parents' marriage license, insurance policies, but also a thick envelope addressed to me in my mother's handwriting, for Grace, to be opened only in the event of my death. My hands trembled as I held it. Opening this would be crossing a line, invading my mother's privacy when she was vulnerable. And yet, if that strange woman at the hospital was telling the truth. The sound of the front door opening startled me. I quickly returned everything to the box except my birth certificate, which I slipped into my pocket. "Grace? You here?" Natalie's voice called out. I found her shaking rain from her umbrella in the foyer. At 27, for years my junior, Natalie was still the golden girl of the family, literally and figuratively. Her blonde hair hung in a sleek bob, and her blue eyes, so like her father's, were sharp and assessing. She wore an expensive wool coat and carried a leather briefcase. The perfect young professional. "I came as soon as I got your messages," she said, embracing me briefly. "How's Mom?" "Stable. The doctors say the bypass was successful, but she'll need to stay in the hospital for a while." Natalie nodded, setting down her briefcase. "You look terrible. Have you slept?" "Something happened at the hospital," I said, deciding to be direct. A woman I didn't know was in Mom's room. She told me Mom swapped me at birth and then disappeared. My sister's expression remained perfectly neutral, too neutral. Some random crazy person? And you're letting it get to you? You're a doctor, Grace. You know how many unstable people wander around hospitals. Security couldn't find her. There's no record of her on camera. So she knew how to avoid security. Or maybe you imagined it. You've been under a lot of stress since Dad died, and now with Mom's surgery. She trailed off, implying but not directly stating that I might be becoming unstable. I didn't imagine it, I insisted, following her into the kitchen where she began making tea with practiced efficiency. And there's something else. I was looking through Mom's files. You were snooping? Natalie interrupted, her voice taking on an edge. I found a locked box with our birth certificates and a letter addressed to me, to be opened only if Mom dies. Natalie set the kettle down with more force than necessary. And did you open it? No, but... Good. Because Mom isn't dead, Grace. She's going to recover, and whatever that letter contains, she obviously doesn't want you to know about it yet. She handed me a steaming mug. Look, we're both tired. Why don't you get some sleep? Things will seem clearer in the morning. I wanted to argue, to press her about why she seemed so defensive, but exhaustion was pulling at me. Fine. But tomorrow I want answers. Of course, Natalie said smoothly. Whatever you need. That night, I dreamed of babies in hospital bassinets, their identifying bracelets being switched by hands I couldn't quite see. I woke to the sound of hushed voices downstairs. The bedside clock read 6:47 a.m. Slipping on my robe, I moved quietly to the top of the stairs, where I could hear Natalie speaking urgently on the phone. She's asking questions. I know, but what am I supposed to tell her? No, she hasn't opened it yet. I'll handle it, but you need to be ready in case. She fell silent as I deliberately made the third step creak. I've got to go, she whispered, then louder, good morning. I made coffee. In the kitchen, Natalie was already dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her laptop open on the counter. I thought I'd get some work done before visiting Mom, she explained. How did you sleep? Who were you talking to? I asked directly. My boss. This emergency leave is coming at a bad time for a case I'm working on. The lie slid easily from her lips, but I caught the way her fingers tightened around her coffee mug. I decided to change tactics. I need to stop by my apartment to get some clothes and check my mail. Want to come with me to the hospital after? Actually, I have a few calls to make. Why don't you go ahead and I'll meet you there this afternoon? The evasion was obvious, but I nodded as if I believed her. Once I heard her shower running, I returned to Mom's office and quickly retrieved the envelope addressed to me. Whatever secrets it contained, I needed to know. In my car, I broke the seal with trembling fingers and unfolded several pages of my mother's familiar handwriting. My dearest Grace, if you're reading this, I am gone, and I can only pray you will find it in your heart to forgive me for the truth I've kept from you. You are not my biological daughter. 31 years ago, I made a decision that has haunted me every day since, even as I've treasured every moment of being your mother. You were born at Mercy General Hospital on April 18th. So was another baby girl, my biological daughter, to a young woman named Marina Vasquez. The letter went on to detail how Eleanor Bennett, my mother, no, the woman who raised me, had deliberately switched the babies. Marina Vasquez had been a cleaning lady at the school where Mom taught. She was a single mother, an immigrant with temporary status, struggling financially. Mom had been suffering from severe postpartum depression after my birth, convinced her baby was somehow wrong. In a moment of what she described as temporary insanity, she had switched the identification bracelets on the babies. I told myself I was giving both girls a better life. Marina would have a healthy baby. My biological daughter had none of the issues I'd imagined in my depressed state, and I would raise you as my own, giving you advantages Marina never could. I convinced myself it was an act of mercy, not selfishness. 3 years later, I genuinely wanted another child, and Natalie was born. By then, Marina had returned to her home country with my biological daughter. I've tried to find them over the years, to make amends somehow, but I've never succeeded. You may hate me for this deception, and I would understand. But please know that from the moment I took you home, you have been my daughter in every way that matters. I have loved you completely. With deepest remorse and eternal love, Mom. I sat in my parked car, the letter clutched in my hands, as rain streamed down the windshield, blurring the world outside. Everything I thought I knew about myself had been based on a lie. I wasn't Grace Bennett, daughter of Eleanor and Robert Bennett, sister of Natalie Bennett. I was someone else's child, the daughter of a woman named Marina Vasquez who had been deliberately denied the chance to raise me. And Natalie, did she know? Was that who she had been speaking to on the phone, Mom? Were they conspiring to keep this secret? I needed evidence beyond this letter. I needed to find Marina Vasquez. At my apartment, I ignored the pile of mail and went straight to my laptop. Using medical school access credentials, I searched birth records at Mercy General for April 18th, 31 years ago. There it was. Marina Vasquez had indeed given birth to a girl, 6 pounds, 4 ounces. My own birth certificate, the official one, not the potentially falsified one in my pocket, listed Eleanor Bennett as mother to a 7-pound, 1-ounce girl born the same day. Next, I searched for any trace of Marina Vasquez. Immigration records showed a Marina Vasquez had left the United States for Guatemala 3 years after my birth, accompanied by a child named Lucia Vasquez. Lucia Vasquez, the name of the daughter who should have been raised by my mother. My biological sister, in a sense. Further searching revealed a Lucia Vasquez now working as a nurse at Sacred Heart Hospital in Oak Ridge, less than 20 miles away. She had returned to the United States 15 years ago on a student visa and had become a citizen. My biological mother's daughter was here, in the same town. The coincidence seemed too great, unless it wasn't a coincidence at all. I found a photograph on the hospital's staff page. Lucia Vasquez had blonde hair and blue eyes. Just like Natalie. Just like my mother. Just like my father. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. The strange woman in the hospital room. Could it have been Marina Vasquez? Coming back to finally reveal the truth? My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Where are you? Mom's asking for you. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to Sacred Heart Hospital, my heart pounding with each mile. I had to find Lucia Vasquez. The reception desk at Sacred Heart directed me to the oncology floor where Lucia Vasquez worked. As I rode the elevator, I tried to prepare what I would say, but no words seemed adequate for the situation. The oncology ward was quiet, patients resting in darkened rooms while nurses moved efficiently between them. At the nurse's station, I asked for Lucia and was told she was with a patient but would be finished soon. When she emerged from a room down the hall, I recognized her immediately from the photo. Up close, the resemblance to my mother, to Eleanor, was striking. The same heart-shaped face, the same slight dimple in her left cheek when she smiled politely at me. "Can I help you?" she asked. "My name is Grace Bennett," I said, watching her face carefully. "I need to speak with you about something important. Private." A flicker of something, recognition, crossed her features before she composed herself. "I'm on shift for another hour. Can it wait?" "It's about Marina Vasquez," I said quietly. "And Eleanor Bennett." Her professional demeanor cracked slightly. "Break room," she said, gesturing down the hall. 5 minutes. The break room was empty. I sat at a small table, arranging my evidence. The birth certificates, my mother's letter, the hospital records. When Lucia entered, she closed the door behind her and stood with her arms crossed. "How do you know those names?" she asked. I pushed the letter toward her. "Eleanor Bennett is the woman who raised me. This is her confession that she switched me at birth with her biological daughter. You, I believe." Lucia's eyes widened as she scanned the letter. She sank into a chair across from me. "This can't be real. The birth records confirm 2 baby girls were born that day. You look exactly like the Bennetts. I've always been the outlier, the only one with dark hair and hazel eyes in a family of blondes with blue eyes. My mother, Marina, she died 5 years ago," Lucia said, her voice hollow. "Cancer. She never told me anything about being switched at birth." "Maybe she never knew," I suggested. "If the switch was done with the ID bracelets, she would have believed I was her child." Lucia was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "You have her eyes," she finally said. "Marina's eyes. I used to wish I had inherited them instead of these pale blue ones." The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. This woman sitting across from me was the daughter my mother should have raised. I was the daughter who should have belonged to Marina Vasquez. "There's something else," I said. "Yesterday, a woman came to Eleanor's hospital room. She told me, she swapped you at birth and then vanished. I thought it might be Marina, but if she passed away..." Lucia shook her head. "It wasn't my mother. But..." She hesitated. "My Aunt Claudia came to visit from Guatemala last week. She and my mother were identical twins. When I told her where I worked, She became very upset. She disappeared the next day, leaving only a note saying she had unfinished business to attend to. I've been trying to reach her since. The missing piece clicked into place. It was her in the hospital room. But how did she know? If Marina never knew about the switch. My mother kept journals, Lucia said. Claudia took them after the funeral. She must have found something, a suspicion at least. We sat in stunned silence, two strangers connected by an unthinkable act committed 3 decades ago. What do we do now? Lucia finally asked. I need to confront Eleanor, I said. And I think you should be there. Lucia checked her watch. My shift ends in 40 minutes. I'll meet you at Mercy General. As I drove to the hospital where my mother was recovering, my mind spun with questions. Did my father know about the switch? Was Natalie aware of what our mother had done? And most disturbing of all, why had Eleanor Bennett kept me so close to the truth all these years? Sacred Heart was the neighboring hospital to Mercy General. Had some part of her wanted the truth to come out? Natalie's car was in the hospital parking lot when I arrived. I texted Lucia to meet me in the cafeteria first. I wanted to speak with her more before the confrontation. As I waited, I noticed a familiar silver-haired woman sitting alone in the corner, watching me. My heart jumped. It was her, the woman from my mother's room. Claudia Vasquez. I approached her table. You're Marina's sister. She nodded once, her pale hazel eyes like mine, assessing me. You look so much like her. I knew the moment I saw you at your mother's bedside. Why didn't you tell me more? Why just whisper those words and disappear? Would you have believed a complete stranger telling you your entire life was a lie? Claudia asked. I needed you to discover the truth yourself. And I needed to find my niece, my real niece. Lucia is meeting me here soon, I said. Claudia's face softened. Marina suspected something wasn't right. She wrote about it in her journals. How different you looked from our family. How she felt a strange disconnection she couldn't explain. But she had no proof. And who would believe an immigrant woman accusing a respected teacher of switching babies? Why did you come forward now, after all these years? Marina made me promise on her deathbed to find the truth. When I read her journals and saw your family name mentioned, I started searching. I found newspaper articles about your father's death last year and Eleanor's recent heart attack. The time felt right for the truth to finally come out. The cafeteria doors opened, and Lucia walked in. Seeing us together, she hurried over. The reunion between aunt and niece was brief, but emotional. There would be time for more later. Right now, we had a confrontation waiting upstairs. Eleanor Bennett's hospital room was dim when we entered, the afternoon sun blocked by heavy clouds. Natalie sat beside the bed, holding our mother's hand. They both looked up as the door opened, their expressions shifting from welcome to shock as they registered not just me, but Lucia and Claudia behind me. Grace, what is this? Natalie demanded, standing. Who are these people? My mother's face had gone pale beneath her gray hair. Her eyes fixed on Claudia with horrified recognition. Marina, she whispered. Marina is dead, Claudia replied coldly. I'm her sister, Claudia. And this, she placed a hand on Lucia's shoulder, is her daughter. Your biological daughter. Eleanor's monitors began beeping faster. Natalie, she gasped, get them out of here. No one is leaving until we get answers, I said, placing my mother's letter on the bed. I know what you did, Mom. I know you switched me with your biological baby. Natalie lunged for the letter, but I pulled it back. You knew? I accused her. That's who you were talking to on the phone this morning. You've been helping her keep this secret. You don't understand, Natalie said, desperation in her voice. Dad never knew. It would have destroyed him. After he died, Mom was going to tell you the truth, but then her heart. Don't. Eleanor interrupted weakly. Don't blame my health, Natalie. The truth is I was a coward. I've always been a coward. She turned her gaze to me, tears streaming down her face. I wrote that letter 2 years ago, intending to give it to you myself. But every time I tried, I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. You were going to lose me either way, I said, my voice breaking. Either by death or by truth. Lucia stepped forward, her professional demeanor cracking as she addressed the woman who had given birth to her. Why? Why would you do this? My mother struggled every day to give me a good life. She worked 3 jobs. We lived in a 1-room apartment until I was 10, all while you raised her daughter in comfort. Eleanor closed her eyes, unable to face the accusation. I was diagnosed with severe postpartum psychosis after you were born, she said to Lucia. I became convinced my baby was somehow wrong, that she would die if she stayed with me. When I saw Marina in the nursery with her healthy baby, with Grace, I convinced myself I was saving both of you. So you just took her child? Claudia demanded. And no one noticed? No one stopped you. It was different then, Eleanor said. Security was minimal. The babies were brought to the mothers only for feeding and then returned to the nursery. I volunteered at the hospital. Everyone knew me. One night during my shift, I switched the ID bracelets. When they brought the babies to be fed the next morning, you each had the wrong child. I finished, feeling sick. By the time I realized what I'd done, really understood it, days had passed. We were home. You were mine. Eleanor reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Grace, please. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I have loved you every day of your life. Not enough to tell me the truth, I said. Natalie moved between us, protective of our mother. She made a terrible mistake 31 years ago. She's been punishing herself ever since. After Dad died, she tried to make it right. She tracked down Marina Vasquez, only to discover she had passed away. Then she found Lucia, working so close by, of all places. She was going to tell you both after she recovered from surgery. I turned to Lucia, whose face was a mask of contained emotion. Did you know any of this before today? She shook her head. I chose Sacred Heart because they offered the best tuition assistance for my nursing degree. I had no idea. She looked at Eleanor. Did you arrange for me to get that scholarship? Eleanor nodded weakly. It was the least I could do. I wanted you to have opportunities. But not the truth, Claudia said bitterly. Not the mother who gave birth to you. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of the heart monitor. Outside, rain began to fall again, pattering against the window. What happens now? Natalie finally asked, looking between all of us. It was the question we were all thinking but afraid to answer. The days following the confrontation passed in a blur of legal consultations, DNA tests that confirmed what we already knew, and long, painful conversations. Eleanor remained in the hospital, her recovery complicated by the stress of the revelation. Natalie moved between anger and grief, sometimes defending our mother, sometimes raging against her deception. I always wondered why she was so much harder on you, she told me one evening as we sat on the porch of our childhood home. Why she pushed you so much more than she pushed me. I thought it was because you were the eldest. Now I wonder if she was trying to justify what she'd done, make sure you had every advantage. I had taken a leave of absence from my surgical practice, unable to focus on healing others while my own life was in pieces. Lucia had done the same, and we had begun the strange process of getting to know each other, two women who should have lived each other's lives. My mother was strict but loving, Lucia told me as we walked through the park where I had played as a child. She worked constantly to give me opportunities. Education was everything to her. Eleanor was the same with me, I admitted, always pushing me to achieve, to become a doctor. I wonder if we would have chosen the same paths if we'd been raised by our biological mothers, Lucia mused. I became a nurse because I watched how the nurses cared for my mother when she was sick. Would I have become one anyway? Would you still have become a surgeon? These questions haunted me. Who would I have been if raised by Marina Vasquez? Would I still be me? Claudia had extended her stay, moving into Lucia's apartment. She filled in the blanks about Marina, how she had returned to Guatemala with 3-year-old Lucia after her work visa expired, how she had eventually made her way back to the United States when Lucia was 12, establishing a new life in a different state before Lucia returned to Massachusetts for nursing school. Marina always felt something was wrong, Claudia explained as she showed us photos of the woman who had given birth to me. Not with you, she clarified to Lucia. She loved you completely. But she had this persistent feeling that something had been taken from her. That's why she kept those journals, trying to make sense of emotions she couldn't explain. I studied the photographs hungrily, looking for pieces of myself in Marina's face. The same eyes, the same high cheekbones. In one photo, she was laughing, head thrown back in a way that Natalie had always teased me about, the Grace laugh, she'd called it. Now I knew it was the Marina laugh. 1 week after the confrontation, Eleanor was released from the hospital. The doctor recommended a home health nurse for the first few weeks of recovery. To everyone's surprise, Lucia volunteered. I'm not doing this for you, she told Eleanor bluntly. I'm doing it because it's who I am. And because I want to know the woman who gave birth to me, even if I can never forgive what you did. Watching them together was surreal, the biological mother and daughter, connected by blood but strangers in every other way. They moved awkwardly around each other in the house where I had grown up, finding their way through a relationship that had no roadmap. Natalie threw herself into the legal aspects of the situation, researching whether there was any precedent for such a case, though no one was interested in pressing criminal charges against a 67-year-old woman recovering from heart surgery. There could be financial considerations, she explained in her lawyer voice. Issues of inheritance, identity documentation, medical records that need correction. But underneath the practicalities was the larger question none of us could answer. Where did we go from here? Could this fractured situation ever resolve into something that made sense? Could any of us ever feel whole again? The answer began to take shape the day I found Eleanor and Lucia sitting together in the garden, looking through old photo albums. "I have these same school pictures of you," Lucia was saying, pointing to my third-grade portrait. "My mother, Marina, saved every school photo. She was so proud of you." Eleanor looked confused. "But how? How did she have Grace's photos?" Lucia exchanged a glance with me as I joined them. She didn't know they were Grace's photos. She thought they were mine. "She saved every picture you sent her." The revelation hung in the air between us. "You sent my school pictures to Marina?" I asked Eleanor. She nodded slowly. "Every year. I found out where she was living and sent them anonymously. I told myself it was the right thing to do, letting her see that you were thriving." I didn't know she thought. Her voice trailed off as the full implication hit her. She thought they were pictures of Lucia, of her daughter. "And she sent these back," Lucia said, pulling a small envelope from her bag. Inside were photographs of a blonde little girl growing up in much humbler circumstances, school portraits taken against the same blue backgrounds as mine, but with a child wearing simpler clothes, her hair cut in less expensive styles. Eleanor's hands trembled as she took the photos. "All these years," she whispered, "we were both watching our daughters grow up from a distance, never knowing that we were looking at the wrong children." The absurdity and tragedy of it struck me then, how Eleanor and Marina had unwittingly maintained a connection, sharing glimpses of daughters they didn't know were their own. It was as if some force had been pushing us toward this moment of truth for decades. That evening, I sat alone in my old bedroom, surrounded by artifacts of a childhood that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. My high school valedictorian medal, trophies from swim meets, medical school acceptance letters. Who had earned these achievements, Grace Bennett or the unnamed daughter of Marina Vasquez? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Natalie stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "Can I come in?" she asked. I nodded, making space for her on the bed. We sat in silence for a moment, as we had done countless times growing up, sharing secrets and dreams. "You're still my sister," she finally said. "Biology doesn't change that. 31 years of being sisters doesn't disappear because of what Mom did before I was even born." "I know," I said, and was surprised to find I'm in it. "You'll always be my sister, Nat. And Mom will always be the woman who raised you," she added cautiously. "Whatever else she did, however terrible her mistake, she loved you. Loves you." I couldn't respond to that yet. The wounds were still too fresh. But as we sat together, I began to see the outlines of a path forward, not a return to what was before, but something new built from the broken pieces of our old lives. The cafe where we met was halfway between Mercy General, where I had returned to my surgical practice, and Sacred Heart, where Lucia continued to work as an oncology nurse. We had been meeting for coffee once a week for the past 4 months, gradually building a relationship neither of us had ever imagined having. "My aunt found another journal," Lucia said as she stirred her latte. "From before I was born. It seems my mother, Marina, knew your mother slightly before their pregnancies. They had attended the same community college night class. Eleanor was the star student. Marina admired her. These discoveries still came regularly, little puzzle pieces that helped make sense of our intertwined histories. Eleanor had moved to a smaller house closer to town, selling the family home and dividing the proceeds equally between Natalie, Lucia, and me, an attempt at restitution that could never fully compensate for what had been taken, but acknowledged the depth of the wrong. "How is your mother?" Lucia asked, as she always did. She had continued to check on Eleanor's recovery even after her professional duties ended, their relationship evolving into something neither of them could quite define. "Better physically. The new medication seems to be working." I hesitated. "She asked if you might come to dinner next week. She wants to show you some of her old teaching materials. She thought, with your interest in healthcare education." Lucia nodded, considering. "I'll think about it." We had all found our way to an uneasy peace. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a recognition that the past couldn't be undone. We could only move forward, carrying the truth with us. DNA had confirmed what we already knew, but the legal complexities of our situation remained unresolved. Natalie had eventually convinced us all that pursuing criminal charges would bring no healing, only more pain. Instead, we had focused on correcting medical records, ensuring our health histories reflected our biological parentage. Claudia had returned to Guatemala but remained in regular contact, a bridge to the mother I would never know. She had given me Marina's journals, which I read slowly, getting to know the woman who had given birth to me through her own words. "I've been thinking about something," I said, pulling a small box from my bag. "These belong to Marina. Claudia thought you might want them, but I wondered if we might share them." Inside were simple gold earrings, nothing valuable except in sentiment. According to Claudia, Marina had worn them every day. Lucia touched them gently. She always said jewelry should be worn, not stored away. That beauty should be part of everyday life. "Then maybe we could take turns," I suggested. "A month with you, a month with me. A piece of her for both of us." Lucia smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "I'd like that." As we left the cafe, walking together for a block before our paths diverged, I thought about the strange woman who had appeared in my mother's hospital room 6 months ago. How 5 whispered words had unraveled the fabric of my life, revealing the complex web of deception, guilt, and connection beneath. The truth had not set us free, as the saying promised. Instead, it had bound us together in new ways, Lucia and me, Eleanor and Lucia, all of us to the memories of those no longer here. We would never be a conventional family, but we were something else just as meaningful. People who had faced a devastating truth and chosen to build something new from its ruins. "Same time next week?" Lucia asked as we reached the corner where we would part ways. "Yes," I said. "I'll be here." I watched her walk away. This woman who might have lived my life, who in another reality would have been Grace Bennett, orthopedic surgeon, daughter of Eleanor and Robert. In that other life, I would have been Lucia Vasquez, nurse, daughter of Marina. But in this life, the only one we had, we were exactly who we had become, 2 women finding our way forward, one step at a time, carrying the whisper of truth that had both destroyed and created our shared story.